Big time fight coming up this weekend in the welterweight division. We have the former interim champ, the former title challenger, the former WEC welterweight champ, the natural born killer, Carlos Condit, on a tidy little 2-fight win streak, taking on another guy on a nice 2-fight win streak in Max Payne Griffin, coming out of Southern California. Spends time at Team Alpha Male, among the other gyms that he frequents. And for Condit, he's been at Jackson Wink forever. And listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But with Carlos Condit, Matt, we've kind of seen a late career resurgence in other aspects of his game that he never seemed to accentuate.
Oh, so you're a grappler now. That's basically what Matt Brown was telling Carlos Condit during their last fight, because the story going into that was, okay, Matt Brown, Carlos Condit, two great warriors, very old in their career, gonna be a great stand-up fight. Carlos Condit said, that's cute and all, but I'm going to show you all these new tools that I've been working on. And it was really nice to see, honestly, because Carlos Condit's big Achilles heel throughout his career has been the wrestling defense. It's been if you can get him on his back, you can hold him there. But we did see, at least against Matt Brown, a different version of Carlos Condit. One that wasn't afraid to go for sweeps. He was a little bit more committed to the submissions when he was trying to threaten with them. And overall, it was just a really good, well-rounded performance from Carlos Condit. And it was something that you had brought up earlier, where it's not just the fact that he beat Court McGee and Matt Brown. Yes, those names in a vacuum might not look very good, but it's not like Court McGee's completely washed. And same thing with Matt Brown. Like, those guys are still out there putting on decent performances. So the fact that Carlos Condit, who, I gotta be honest, even I thought was completely washed, is still out there putting on really competitive performances, it's just a really nice thing to see.
If you like this fight, all you have to do is toss a like up there. It takes 2 seconds. I mean, I like this fight, but it can't like my own videos, you know? That's how it works. But when I look at this one, for Max Griffin, the last 2 wins, wow. I mean, you look at the fights before the wins. I think that's the most telling part. So, go back 5. Majority decision over Zelim Imadaev. Well, we talked about Zelim Imadaev. He fought Michel Pereira. He looked bad. Zelim Imadaev, they sold you Wolf tickets. He was in that Hadis Ibrahimov Russian category of not so great. Then he loses to Alex Morono. That was a back and forth war. That was a great fight. Then he loses to Alex Oliveira by split decision. That was another back and forth fight. It was enjoyable. He goes to fight Ramiz Brahimaj. And he goes in there just whipping elbows. It popped Ramiz's ear off. That was kind of gross, but a great win for Max Griffin. And he really withstood some adversity in that fight to get the win. Then his last time out against Sung Kanan, I remember getting ready for that fight just 4 months ago, being like, yeah, you know, it's a close fight on paper. I don't think Sung Kanan's really fought the same level of talent. I think Max Griffin's going to win this fight. But I didn't think he was going to win the fight like that. Like, he looked amazing.
He really did. And for Max Griffin, his game is kind of basic. Like, nothing he does really jumps out of the page at you. Like, he's a good boxer. He's got good wrestling. But again, it's not like he's some Yair Rodriguez type striker who you watch and you're like, wow, I need to see a lot more of that. Like, he's got good but not great power, I'd say. The one thing I will say about Max Griffin, though, he's leveled something up that isn't like an intangible like kickboxing. He's leveled up his mentality. He does have more of a killer instinct now, especially his last 2 fights, than he was showing. Because it was weird. Max Griffin went from being that all-action kind of fighter who was on the prelims, got a little bit of notoriety, and it almost felt like he kind of went away from that fighting style. But then it was like, okay, I'm going to get my mind right, if that's the proper way of saying it, and I'm going to go back to fighting in the style that he once was fighting at when he was making his way up the rankings. And listen, take out the Colby Covington loss, I guess, at UFC 202, he was on a really good run. And this is a weird fight, because most of the time we do talk about Carlos Condit versus his opponent, it's how much older is Carlos Condit than his opponent. But this is going to be one of those weird fights where it's like, oh, not that much. He's 37, but Max Griffin is 35. And this is always the weird thing when I talk about Max Griffin. I always think he's like 31, 32, but he is a little bit more advanced in his age, so he is expecting to go on some kind of a run. This has got to be it. Like, you've got to go out there against Carlos Condit and really prove a point, because you're never going to get another opportunity like this, where it's as big of a name as Carlos Condit at this sort of weird limbo of his career. Because one thing I think we can all agree on, myself included, is that Carlos Condit now isn't as good as the Carlos Condit who fought GSP. I don't think that's it's not a bad thing to say. It's you're 37, you're going to age.
You had 45 pro fights.
Exactly, and all against like top level guys for the most part. The question is, has Carlos Condit's striking diminished to the point where Max Griffin could go out there and outstrike Carlos Condit? Because for me, I think Max Griffin's the better wrestler, but I do wonder if he can just go out there and hold Carlos Condit down like we've seen some guys in the past do. Because listen, it's one thing for a guy like Neil Magny to do that, who maybe his wrestling is only a little bit better than Max Griffin's, but his cardio is so much better that he can just really be dedicated to the takedown over and over again. For me, I actually think this is an oddly winnable fight for Carlos Condit, and I'm almost kicking myself in the back because last time I had one of those like, oh, I used to be a big fan of this guy and now I have to not be biased, it was Matt Brown, and I said he was going to lose to Diego Lima, and what did Matt Brown do? He went out there and was able to turn back the clock one last time, and even to throw in another like basketball reference, Brook Lopez recently, who like a lot of people thought was over the hill, the Lakers didn't even want him on the team, in one game in the playoffs, went back and scored his career high and got 33. I think Carlos Condit still has enough tread on the tires to have at least a really fun competitive fight with Max Griffin. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do think Carlos Condit can even win a unanimous decision against Griffin.
Condit the underdog. You open a plus 150. He's a plus 155 right now for Max Griffin. Open a minus 175. He's a minus 190 right now. I know those sound wonky, but those are the averages at best fight odds. In terms of the Tapology votes, 1,350 of them. They're surprises to us as they are to you. 57% Griffin, 43% Condit. 75% of them have Griffin to win by decision. 78% have Condit to win by decision. The weird thing is, Carlos Condit, the large majority of his wins are by finish. I know we talk about it, and we talked about it into his last fight, the fact that he has so many submission wins, but he's usually, if the striking kind of gets him into a submission, then we're going to go for it that way. But his last two fights, we've seen him really accentuate his wrestling. And it was weird because you would have thought Court McGee would have been offensive with his wrestling, but he wasn't. And the striking kind of opened up for Condit. And then in his last fight, really did well with the wrestling. For Max Griffin, his striking continues to get better. He does have the wrestling to fall back on. But Griffin was always one of those guys that needed to kind of get hit to get into a fight. So we'll see how that plays out in this one. I do like Max Griffin in terms of more tread on the tires. And he hasn't had those absolute wars. He's had wars, yes, but he hasn't had 45 pro fights. He's at 25. So I'm going to go with Max Griffin in this one ever so slightly, but I do love this fight.
Oh, without a doubt. And for Griffin, I really think his boxing is going to be how his bread gets buttered. He's really going to have to get on the inside of the range of Carlos Condit. But that's the thing. Condit has the much more wide variety of strikes in his toolbox. He goes for flying knees. He does through the elbows. He has a lot of weird, unique things that I do think could cut up the face of Max Griffin and at least make a lasting impression on the judges. And for that reason, I've got to say Carlos Condit at the age of 37 is still maybe going to win a UFC fight.
Maybe. Matt's got Condit. I've got Griffin. Absolutely love the fight. Let us know down below who you've got in this one. Are you going with pain or are you going with the natural born killer? Maybe it's a draw. You go with the painful natural born killer. I don't know, but it's a great fight. We've got some more great ones coming up that you're not going to want to miss, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.